Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Whiskey Wheels and Wounds. As always, I'm Shawn, 9-year Air Force vet, and the smartest of the two.
And I am Steve, 22-year U.S. Army veteran.
This is turning into a who can get who on the intro.
I mean,
Before we get started in this week's episode, Steve's got our usual highlighted whiskey of the week.
this week's featured,
Featured.
yeah, Smarty. Whiskey of the week is Lead Slingers, by the guys that have Range 15, the gear, same guys. Range 15, the movie as well. You ever see that?
I don't think I have.
Oh my goodness, it's probably the dumbest shit that you'll ever see and laugh about.
Why does this sound familiar?
Oh, it has it's a star-studded cast of military
Oh, I haven't watched it yet, but I have looked this up before.
Yeah, Range 15 is hilarious. Anyways,
because it's got a lot of Black Rifle guys.
Is the word I was just trying to get the mental Rolodex to hit. Military influencers.
Ranger up in Article 15 clothing.
Yeah. What I say? I say Range 15 clothing. Yeah, Article 15 clothing. That's what I meant. So company is Scissortail Distillery, Moore, Oklahoma. Mash bill is corn, barley, smoke peaked rye, aged 8 months, 40%. Release is ongoing, $23 for any one of these number of bottles that I have. Very reasonable priced. Get them pretty much anywhere. The bottles are pretty cool. Yeah, so Lead Schlinger is this week's featured whiskey.
Well, that's cool. I like the labels.
Yeah,
they're pretty good.
The inner labels are pretty cool as well.
So, June 25th, 1950 was the start of the Forgotten War.
That's right.
So that's what we're going to talk about this week is the Forgotten War, because this episode will be coming out a couple of days after the 74th anniversary of the start of the Korean conflict.
Yep.
There has officially been no end to the Korean conflict.
There is a armistice in place.
I won't shoot at you, you won't shoot at me, let's figure it out.
And they still shoot at each other. Up at the DMZ.
I learned a lot researching for this episode. Because again, it's called the Forgotten War for a reason.
Right.
I learned a lot of fucked up shit that went down too.
Yep.
Like it was crazy. The infancy of this soon to be conflict started right after World War II. Because Japan originally had control of Korea.
Yep.
Then after the war and the surrender and stuff, the U.S. said we're going to divide it in half at the 38th parallel.
Yep.
Stalin actually could have kept going.
Yep.
But he waited at the 38th parallel for 3 weeks before the U.S. could get to the 38th parallel. So, like, if he wouldn't have stayed there, that whole DMZ zone would have been completely different.
Right.
But, the leaders in North Korea and the leaders in South Korea each claimed legitimate government over the entire Korean peninsula.
Right.
There was a lot of pissing matches back and forth. China was nosing in, we were nosing in, Russia was nosing in, and it came to a head in June 1950 when the North Koreans decided to go charging across the 38th parallel.
Right. So, and just to back up a little bit, before that, they had elections in the North.
Yep.
And decided to become communist, and their capital in Pyongyang. And then they had what Kim Il Sung was the first dictator of North Korea,
which started the Kim dynasty.
And then they voted in the South to be a republic, and they had elections, and as America usually does, they emplaced their dude, like they did in Iraq.
Yeah. And as usually, the guy that America puts in place, probably not the best dude for the job.
Right. This guy was living in America prior to going back to South Korea and becoming the president. So yeah, America likes to think they know it all, like my co-host here. And then
I don't think I know it all.
and then they open their mouth and prove themselves wrong. Um,
I know a lot.
so, but yeah, so elections were held. This is the start of the Cold War.
Yeah.
This, many people don't look at it, like, again, forgotten war. Many of our generation that grew up in the 80s, um, all we think about is, Reagan saying Gorbachev, tear down the wall. That was our
Well, and I can think back into school, really, Cuba was where everybody said was the start of the Cold War, but it was actually the proxy war
right,
between the US
and
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 Russia
and that's
or the Soviet Union.
and that's the other thing. There was a lot of proxy wars that went on. This being the first, um, that went on during the Cold War. So this being the first. So yeah,
Yeah. So I know that China threw a lot of support towards North Korea, but I didn't know, and that was something I learned. Mao, they had just finished the Chinese Revolution and communists had just been, implemented in China. But before China would actually engage South Korea via North Korea and in turn engage the US, Mao went to Stalin and asked for permission.
yeah.
Like that was just, I mean, it makes sense, because every version of communism has originated out of the Soviet Union. Um, but yeah, I was like, man, that motherfucker really went up there and was like, hey, Godfather, can I do this? And yeah, that was what threw the Stalin is what threw the weight of the Chinese behind him.
right,
And while there weren't a lot of active Soviet, I mean, there was Soviet people in the
yeah, yeah.
in Korea.
Hmm.
The majority of what they provided to North Korea was um,
Tanks,
tanks, things like that,
planes.
MiGs, yeah. And then China was the one that provided a huge amount of actual boots on the ground.
Yeah, because prior to the United States' presence in Korea, um, overwhelmingly, um, you know, North Korea had over well over 100,000, close to 200,000 troops. They had tanks. South Korea didn't.
Well, and again, stuff I never knew before. North Korea was the industrial hub of the Korean Peninsula.
Right,
South Korea was not. So they were behind the eight ball right out the gate as far as being an industrialized
right.
country.
Yes. So South Korea had zero tanks against over 200 plus tanks. Uh, they had like 20 planes against 200 plus. Like that ratio there is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah. And then South Korea had 98,000 in the Rock Army, and then like I said, China, like you said, China. Once China, they put another 100 plus thousand troops in. U.S. brought, I want to say 300,000, and then I think there was 14 other countries who helped. Um,
Yeah, it was So
the allies, I guess.
everything
And
was
they
done under the banner of the United Nations.
right,
Because the United Nations Security Council, or whatever it was, they made the decision to go into Korea
right,
when the Soviet Union wasn't there,
right,
at the thing. So it was the U.S., the U.K., Canada, Turkey, Australia, the Philippines, New Zealand, Thailand, Ethiopia, Greece, France, Colombia, Belgium, South Africa, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg.
right. So
And on the other side,
South,
it was China, the Soviet Union.
yeah. So South Korea 98,000, America 300,000, and then the other countries you just mentioned 6,000. They sent so all 14 of those other countries send 6,000 troops.
Yeah,
Not each.
together,
Yes. I,
which is usually how UN peacekeeping missions go.
right.
The UN wants to tell to tell America that stop dipping and dapping and shit that doesn't pertain to American interests,
Yeah.
but yet we're the ones they send in every time they need to do a peacekeeping mission.
Right. So yeah. So when it became when America first got there and moved north, it was the move to the Yalu River, um, and before China got involved. Before China got involved, that ass in Korea was getting whooped, um, and moved the North Koreans all the way short of the Yalu River, which is Yalu River separates North Korea with China, and Douglas MacArthur, general type, one each. Um, that was his stopping point, and yeah, and then the Chinese got involved, and
Yeah,
the war lasted 2 years after that.
yeah. So, 1950 in June, um, the North Koreans invaded South Korea, crossed the 38th parallel, and within like 2 months before the U.S. got involved, the Korean army went from like 95,000 to like 22,000.
Yeah,
Like they beat the fucking brakes off them.
yeah,
They took over the majority of the peninsula. The president fled the country again.
hmm
Um, Re, what was his name? Re something. Singman Re, and he fled the country again. The North Koreans took over Seoul, the rest of the peninsula, so much so that when the Americans showed up, they didn't have an air base to launch off of.
yeah,
So most of the air attack they were launching off of the USS Valley Forge because they didn't have anywhere else to do it from.
right.
Um, eventually it started gaining ground, going back towards the river and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Well, yes, and they had to. They landed in Incheon, which Incheon is not a beach, right? So it wasn't a Normandy type invasion, right? A lot of jagged rocks, a lot of rock faces at Incheon. So um,
But they knew how to scale 100 feet in 30 minutes.
uh, I mean, you know, lesson learned, man. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But yeah, I mean, it's that's where they landed. They wasn't expected to land there because of the terrain, and that's what got them a foothold in the Americans a foothold in Korea at Incheon.
Yeah, and one of the things I learned, which we'll go over a little later in this episode, is from the end of World War II to Korea, the start of the Korean War, politics had decimated the military
Yeah,
in the United States. Um, they were the Army and the Navy were gutted. I mean, absolutely gutted. They had gotten rid of tons of surplus ships, landing craft, tanks. Normally, after some type of conflict, everything will come back. Up to this point, everything would come back, be reconditioned,
yep,
and then put away in storage.
Yep. Refit, reset.
Yep. And this, they didn't. There were political decisions made, policy decisions made, um, from Truman on down through his cabinet, that instead of doing that to cost cut and to
Yep.
unification, they just got rid of shit in mass. So much so, which I thought was absolutely fucking mind blowing, that they didn't have enough. They no the guys that were in Korea, the boots on the ground, they were so sorely undersupplied and underprepared that the army was pulling Pershing tanks off of pedestals in Fort Knox to send them to Korea because they didn't have enough Sherman tanks.
Yep.
Like, you got to be fucking kidding me,
Yep.
man. Like, think about that today's standards, you know? We don't have enough M1s, so we're going to go pull some Shermans down and send them over to fight in its place. Like, that was the equivalent of what it was.
Right.
I was just like, there's so much I learned about this conflict and the things that led up to it, the things that happened during it, and the first real um political influence in the Department of Defense as far as policies and things like that, you know, and the backstabbing and the undercutting that the generals did because you either wanted to curry favor with the uh president and his staff that were in, or they weren't given very much money, so you were trying to fuck everybody else so that your branch could get a couple of bucks.
Right.
It was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And because of that, I would say of the 38,000 that died or didn't come back, a huge chunk of that was because of this piss poor political policies back home,
Oh yeah.
which again leads to something we've talked before, that politicians and generals, when they get into pissing contests, is Joe's the one that suffers.
Right. And something, you know, and I'm sure Andy can contest to this. Like when I went on the honor flight, and you go to the National Mall, and the Korean War Memorial is there, and I'm standing I'm standing there by myself, and there was a Korean War veteran that was on the flight with us, and the the young lady that was his guardian. It's if you've never been there, it's basically a squad moving through rice paddies is the memorial.
Right.
Um, and then it's surrounded by a wall with all the names of those who perished during that conflict. But you know, so the young lady asked the veteran, uh, you look at the expressions on their face, and she said, "I wonder what they're thinking." And without fucking hesitation, he said, "They're thinking it's fucking cold." You know what I mean? It's fucking cold. And I giggled because I served in Korea, and it gets balls cold
Yeah.
in Korea. But you know, everything you ever see in Korea is like it's like almost the only time they fought was in the winter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and which is not true. They fought for 3 years. But yeah,
Everything you learn about that war is a caricature of what actually happened.
right. And but yeah, I mean, but without hesitation, he says it's fucking cold. And I'm like, you know, out of anything, like he could have said anything, right? But that's the thing he remembers 75 years later.
Yeah.
Um, man. And so, yeah, I mean, it's unequipped um, in some of the harshest conditions that Americans ever had to fight in. Um, Yeah, I mean, it's
And there was a lot of, one of the stats I read is now, there's like a 70 some percent um, pro American view in South Korea. It's it's commonly referred to as in the studies and articles I was reading is one of, if not the most pro American country in the world. At the time that this happened, there was a lot of anti-American sentiment in South Korea because that Syngman Rhee dude that we propped up,
yeah,
um, he was a fucking totalitarian dictator. He was executing political opponents. Just like he didn't give a fuck about his people at all.
right,
And as we usually talk, concepts are good until people get involved. And
right,
and so because this was the guy that the Americans stood up, and this is the guy that they supported, a lot of the everyday people, because they it was like 3 million civilians that died in
yeah,
Korea.
ridiculous.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was insane. And so the anti-American sentiment was pretty high
right,
because all these people are dying in this conflict. Most of these people are farmers and stuff. They don't give a fuck who's in charge. Just don't kill me.
yeah,
And so it was interesting to see how that high American anti-American sentiment and this brutal dictator that we got behind was such a contrast to the communist push that was coming from North Korea, and then how in the span of 3 years everything just flipped.
yeah,
Like it was crazy,
yeah,
absolutely crazy.
yeah. Because like Seoul now is a metropolis. It's holy shit. I mean, I've never in my life seen so many people in one place as you will see Seoul every day.
Well, since 1953, Seoul has been on a steady incline,
Yeah.
and since 1953, North Korea has been mostly stagnant.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Like I was reading reports that North Korea looked like a wasteland because the sheer amount of bombs that were dropped. The number was fucking lunacy.
yeah,
Absolutely crazy. Let me find that fucking thing again
yeah.
because it was nuts.
It's you know, I served up out in the Western Corridor my second time in Korea, and um, my barracks was affectionately called TRP 1, Target Reference Point 1, because on a clear day we could see North Korea. Um, so, and we were on the backside of a mountain. Try walking up that motherfucker drunk. Uh, don't 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 work well. Um, but I'm telling you, like every and that's the other thing. Like the first place I was on the engineer reconnaissance team was in Korea in 2002, and they send you out with the scouts, and these motherfuckers, the scouts, not the Koreans, these motherfuckers, they're walking around with OE 254s on their rucks. And OE 254 is a large antenna. Um, and yeah, they're humping OE 254s up into the mountains, setting up an OE 254, running it off a man pack. It's and they look at you like, you got your antenna? Like, no, fucker. I'll talk to you. You talk to talk to the fucking space with that goddamn thing. But yeah, I mean it's you know, the, the amount of time you have while walking up and down and then back up these fucking mountains, uh, I didn't have to serve in Afghanistan to appreciate what those who did at elevation, um, yeah, because I did it in Korea. Um,
Yeah, when I was in Bagram, We came in from Germany on C-17s, and you fly in, and they hug the mountain, they go up over it, and then they do an immediate, because this was '04,
Yeah.
straight down the side of the mountain and land in Bagram. And in Bagram, you look 360 degrees, there's a mountain peak around you. You're basically in this valley,
Right.
but you're at elevation of like 75, 8,000 feet up. Like it's crazy. But it would be like 70 during the day and then like -19 at night. It would be
Yeah.
so fucking cold. So when you're sitting there talking about that old Korean War vet saying he's thinking it's fucking cold,
Yeah.
I'm sitting there going, yeah, I worked night shift when I
Yeah.
was in Afghanistan. It's fucking cold.
Yeah. And so and there was plenty of times, you know, up on the mountains, I'm like, these motherfuckers fought wars up here,
Yeah.
you know? And I'm like, God damn, like you you gain respect by walking in someone's shoes, you know what I mean? Or,
Yeah.
walking where others have walked. And yeah, but Koreans are, man, they're some nice people. And culture shock, let me tell you, it's not Eastern Ohio,
No.
right? Um, I got off, and I know we're talking about the Korean War, so I'll quit talking about me in a second, but maybe I won't. Probably not. Um, I got off the bus or got off the plane, got on the bus in Kempo, and we head out, and they tell you you're going to 2ID land, and 2ID land is north. I mean, it's what's guarding the DMZ now, and so that's everything north. And so we pull out, and the first person I see is a older woman. We call her Ajima, and she has a blanket wrapped around her with a small child in the blanket. So the child is hugged to her back with a blanket so that she can carry all the other shit that she's. Anyways, she just cops a squat, takes a piss right there on the side of the road in Seoul, and I'm like, God damn, not, not in Eastern Ohio anymore.
Yeah.
So it's different.
My dad was there in the early '80s. And he, as a young guy, not married, he was in seventh heaven.
Oh yeah, yeah,
He loved it over there.
yeah,
Absolutely loved it.
yeah. I mean, it's again, um, you're treated well as an American. Um, so yeah, I mean, honest to God, I looked inspired by um, Andy going to Ireland. I'm like, I wouldn't mind going back to Korea and visiting, and taking Chrissy with us, and but it's much cheaper when you do it with the army. I'm like, well, I qualify for space A, but like, hey girl, you ever ride on a C5?
Could could you imagine though? You guys go to Korea and you're just bebopping along, and all of a sudden this 6'4" Korean comes by that looks kind of like you. That was what Dad told me. He's like, "Hey, you ever get sent to Korea and you see somebody that looks kind of like you? If it's a girl, I wouldn't fuck her."
Yeah, yeah,
What an idiot.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, but it's one of those things. Again, it's you know, the United States was in Korea because of politics.
Yep.
Um, and initially, Korea, like Korea, wasn't even on the radar of the United States government. You know, and then
It was an afterthought. Like they
it
talked
was
about it in the Tehran,
right,
and then in another one after that. But it was just like, all right, well, you take half, we'll take half, we'll figure it out from there.
right, and then and the whole time they're trying to have peace talks throughout the UN. And then the North Koreans were like, listen, don't send no more civilians over here. We're just talking to military. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's Korean War had choppers. They had jet fighters.
Mm-hmm.
And this is,
But
like
not in the beginning. In the
no, no, no,
beginning,
no, no.
well, I was gonna say in the beginning, because they were so underfunded, they were still flying P-51s.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. Like,
Like it was crazy.
but you know, um,
But that was the first conflict with jet age.
yeah. So I mean, it's. I tell you, I mean, again, you can just look back. Just a side note, look back through the history of the United States military, and someone had to be dumb enough. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we want to throw you out a plane and have you hang on to a bed sheet. What do you think? Yep.
Hey, we want to throw you in a box with wings,
Right.
put you behind an airplane,
Yep.
and tow you around.
Yep. I'll do it. Hey, we want to put you in a jet fighter, no propellers, and put you on a fucking rocket. Oh, yeah. That sounds cool. Let's do that. You know what I mean?
It never worked for Wile E. Coyote, but it'll work for me.
Yeah. Fuck, man. Like, just listen. Like, there was 19,000 airborne troops that landed in Normandy. They all qualify for being fucking dumb as fuck. You know what I mean? Oh, they're brave and yeah, absolutely. But there's a thin line, thin fucking line. They all volunteered to jump out of fucking aircraft.
Yeah.
God damn. And most of them sons of bitches will say, and I use that in the nicest possible way. Most of them sons of bitches will be like, I only did it for the extra money.
Yeah.
$5 goddamn dollars. $5. Like now it's like 230 or 300, whatever it is now.
And most of them volunteered for airborne because that wasn't somewhere they were sending draftees.
Right. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, I get extra money? $5 fucking dollars? Yeah. Like, fuck me running.
I'll do a lot of dumb shit for $5.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll do that.
$5 is $5. Hell, I wear a pair of fucking nut huggers for free and post that shit on the internet. So, I talk shit.
You're Paula Bunyan.
I mean, yeah, I'm Paula Bunyan. I talk shit, but
Yeah.
I'd be it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just comforting, right? I bring it up like in amazement. It's comforting to know that I'm not alone.
No.
There's other motherfuckers out there that are equally as fucking
And the dumb shit you did, even when you were over in Iraq, pales in comparison to that kind of dumb shit.
Yeah.
And they would look at today, they would be like, really?
Right.
This shit, that ain't nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's crazy. It's definitely crazy. And the same thing happened in Korea. Those guys were, like you said, going up mountains
Yep.
and fucking chest deep snow, fighting an enemy that was just hell bent on defending their little piece of the world.
And they were told, like, part of the problem was MacArthur, he didn't respect the Chinese. Ill-equipped, yeah, there's a lot of them, but they're ill-equipped. They're not led well. They're not, you know what I mean? So he didn't think highly of the Chinese. When in fucking history has that ever been successful? Oh, yeah, we'll step all over these people. Don't worry about them. And then that bold true. You know what I mean? Like, fuck me.
That was the time that the Mao Revolution took place and stuff. And look at where China's come since then.
Yeah.
Obviously, MacArthur, you're on the wrong side of history of that decision.
Yeah.
Because with all of its warts, and it's got a lot of them, they have progressed rapidly.
Yeah. And he did get relieved. So
yeah,
he did.
But then Truman made him the Secretary of Defense.
Well,
after
we'll
Lewis
get there.
Johnson.
We'll get there. We'll get there. But I'm saying, I mean, you know, yeah, don't. I want you to run the war. I don't like the way you run the war. I want you to not run the war. And then, well, I need you to run the war again in a different capacity.
Yeah. You don't really know a lot about Truman's presidency. You know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
not really talked about a
Yeah.
lot. You know, most of the World War II stuff's done on the FDR side.
Yep.
You know, Truman was the one that pulled the trigger to drop the bombs
Yep.
in Japan. Um, and because of that, that impacted his um, foreign policy. I've got the atomic bombs. That right there should tell everybody just shut up and color.
Right.
You do what we tell you to do because we have that, and we don't need anything else. Well, all of a sudden, Russia gets atomic bombs, and now it's like, wait a minute, hold up, let me think for a second.
Right. Now, bullying is not working.
Yeah, they're the more I learned about as I went through this, just that couple of year time frame in Truman's presidency, he was not a good president. He made a lot of dumbass decisions
Yeah.
in regards to foreign policy and or defense.
Yeah.
I didn't dig into the rest of his presidency because it wasn't pertinent to what I was doing here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was nuts. In 3 years, a lot of civilians were killed. A lot of the Korean Peninsula was laid waste.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Americans died. A shit ton of South Korean military age males died. Um, North Korea took heavy losses. China took heavy losses. Um, I mean, it was a lot
And then at the end of the
of
day,
death.
and at the end of the day, they just stop fighting one day,
Yeah, pretty
and
much.
you're like, what the fuck? Like us as a country we still haven't figured out how to fucking like Truman. For all the things you just said about Truman figured out how to end a fucking war. Like exclamation point, end the war. Every war since then, every fucking conflict since Truman dropped motherfucking bombs on Hiroshima has been Korea armistice, eh, Vietnam. Everybody considers that a loss. Fucking Desert Storm. You know what I mean? Let's fucking take over. Let's take over Iraq. Nah, let's not. Fucking 100 hours. We'll send troops home. You know what I mean? Then Iraq for 20 years. Then Afghanistan for fucking 20 years. And then the fucking end to those two conflicts, fucking horrible. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, so for all his faults, that motherfucker, he can exclamate some.
And right now we're doing the same thing in the Ukraine, fighting another proxy war.
Right. You know what I mean? So, like, you know, he who does not learn from history is deemed to repeat it.
Yeah.
Or damned to repeat it.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever. I mean, which applies.
Well, I mean, on a slight political leaning, uh, when you've got guys that are in Congress that have been there since the end of the Korean War.
Right?
well, we did it that time, it didn't work. We did it that time, it didn't work. We did it that time, it didn't work. We did it that. You know what? It's like that fucking crazy ex-girlfriend.
Yeah. Yeah.
It didn't work that time, but
Yeah.
but she'll change for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on.
No, not really.
And what people, what people don't understand, there's lives attached to those bad decisions.
Yep.
There's lives attached to it. And that's the problem. That's the problem. I mean, yeah.
So they tried to sign an armistice for a while. They couldn't get the talks right. And then 29 November 1952, President-elect Dwight D. Eisenhower went to Korea to learn what might end the war. Eisenhower took office on 20 January 1953. Stalin died on 5 March. The new Soviet leaders, engaged in their internal power struggle, had no desire to continue supporting China's efforts and called for an end to the hostilities.
Yeah.
The Soviet Union's like, we got issues. Fuck y'all. We can't be bothered with this right now. China's like, if you're not going to help,
Right.
I can't do this by myself. And North Korea's over there going, I am a non existent participant at this point because I am worthless as tits on a boar hog.
Yeah.
So the UN, and this is really neat. India was the one that proposed the armistice that eventually was adopted through the UN. So they signed the armistice on 27 July 1953. Shocker, the totalitarian dickhead that the U.S. propped up, Syngman Rhee, refused to sign it, because he wanted all of it. But the war still ended, even though North Korea and the Kim dynasty claimed they won the war. That's what established the DMZ, which is mostly the 38th parallel.
Right.
That's got both the Korean Public Army and the ROC, Republic of Korea, on each side.
Yep.
I've not been to the DMZ. I've had friends that have been to the DMZ when they were stationed in Korea, and they said the difference between the soldiers on each side is glaring. Because North. One of the things I read was because of the malnutrition that happened in North Korea, children that were in China that were refugees, when they became 18 years old, they compared them to 18-year-old South Korean males, and they were like 5 inches shorter because of the malnutrition. So I've had buddies that are like, dude, when I went to the DMZ, you look over at the North Korean army and, they're just what you would expect. And then you look over at the ROC soldiers and they're fucking massive. Like there is clearly a show of intimidation that don't fuck with us.
And it's on purpose.
Yeah.
So in Panmunjom, which is split in half, they have a building up there that is split in half. One side's on North Korea, one side's
Is that
on
the little village that's
Yep.
Yeah. I've read about that.
And that's President Trump. That's where President Trump went. It's always cool. You go tours in there and you can step over into North Korea. You know what I mean? A ceremonial step, I guess. But when you're there inside the building, there'll always be like North Korean guards looking in the building. But on all the South Korean buildings, South Korean guards will split the corner. So you can only see half their body, and they stand at rock ready, was which they call it, rock ready, and so half their body is split the corner of this building. So they're looking at you, they're staring at you, with just one eye, and again, a show of intimidation. You know, um, on the south side of Panmunjom, they have a huge South Korean flag. On the north side of Panmunjom, they have a bigger North Korean flag. And this went back and forth. The dick measuring contest went back and forth. There's always there's always defectors, hell, they can take you in the tunnels that North Korea built, that they talk about, that they're wide enough for 2 tanks to go side by side, and it's from the DMZ headed to Seoul, and of course they didn't get to Seoul, but when you go to Korea, when I went there in the 90s, I was in Korea when Kim Il Sung died. and his son said that they were going to bury his father in Seoul. He was born in Seoul. They're going to bury him in Seoul. If he has to bring his army to Seoul to bury him, that's what he'll do. So when his health failed or was failing, all these reports came out, and he died at probably, I don't know, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. Don't quote me on it. I know it was dark out.
It was dark 30.
Yeah, it was dark out when well, when we got the alert, he died. It was dark out. So I don't, I, you know, um, and we loaded up live ammo, loaded up live rounds on our tanks and stuff, and we pushed to our assembly area where we were practiced. Here's another little tidbit. There's bridges all over South Korea, especially in the north, all over South Korea that are already pre-primed with demolition. So if the north does invade again, they can blow those bridges in place. And then we have engineers. I know I keep talking about engineers because we're fucking awesome, but we have engineers to build bridges, and then we have machines, bridge layers, and
Yeah.
things of that nature. But one of my jobs, the second time I was in Korea, was to do bridge reconnaissance on these bridges and check the demolitions and make sure they were. I mean, it's TNT, old school TNT, in these bridges and dynamite, and been there for 50 fucking years. So, and again, this was in 2022. So
So if you
20 in 2002, not 2022.
2002,
2002.
yeah,
That's
that's what you're looking.
yeah,
When you're talking about that village and how it's split down the middle,
right.
in recent memory, there's been one or two American soldiers, or sorry, American service members
Defect as
that
well.
they go up there like they're touring and then just go right over into North Korea because for some reason that sounds like a great idea.
You can't fucking fix stupid.
No,
You can't fix it. I mean,
no, but you can let it defect.
yeah. Thank you for your
Again,
service.
that's like those dumbass college students that say queers for Palestine.
Yeah, and they're all they're all E4s.
Yeah. The rest of the mafia is like, bruh, bruh, we don't want to be known for this shit.
No, they're like, you know what would be fucking cool? Come here, come here. Hey, Vickers, come over here. Hey, I bet you when we go up to Panmunjom, because your unit take tours up there,
Yeah.
right? You get in your class A's and shit, and you go take a tour, and you think it's the coolest shit ever. And I bet, I bet you won't. And take another shot. I bet you won't. Yeah, I will. No, you won't. Fuck it, And motherfuckers like, look at me. They fucking, oh, bye, motherfucker.
Oh shit. Oh shit. You ain't taking that sergeant slot now. I
Nope.
guess I'll have to do it.
Gotcha, bitch. Yeah, I mean it's yeah, man.
It-
We went. So I had a lieutenant. He was a twin, and his brother was an infantryman up on the DMZ, and he was in charge of. Oh, so you have a brother that's an engineer. You think his platoon would come up and get rid of all this cache of fucking explosives we have for the last 25 years? I'll ask him. And then, my PL was like, hey, my brother wants us to go up there and blow some shit up. Yeah, let's go. So we so we go up there and they're like, hey, on this range, there's like 100-pound limit. Okay. Well, we have this mill van that we have to get, like, I want everything out of this mill van expended in 2 days. We're like, all right. So you send your fucking high speed in there and say, all right, go calculate the fucking poundage in there. He comes out and he's like, it's X number of pounds. Okay, divide that by 100. It's X number of fucking X
Like
number of fucking
days.
explosions,
Yeah.
right? For 2 days. And oh, by the way, you can't fucking blow at night, you know, things of that nature. So you're like, oof, all right, well, we're gonna have to fudge the. And so I go to him, I'm like, hey sir, here's the deal. I'm like, we got a 100-pound limit. We have, X number of pounds over, what we can expend in 2 days. He's like, yeah, but I need it all gone. Okay, it'll all be gone. I'm just letting you know. If someone asks you how much was in there, say it was this and not, you know. And I'm like, and I'll blow it until range control gets out here. And when they do, I'll blow at 100. And when they leave again, I'll go back to what, I'm like, somebody going to come out here with their calibrated ear and be like, oh, that sounds like 150 pounds, not 100 pounds, you know? And we did for 2 days. Man,
I bet you had fun.
oh, it's, but,
To blow shit
but
up.
fucking sure enough, you rock fucking Odyssey's windows enough times, they call and fucking range control comes out there. How much you blowing? 100 pounds. Boy, it don't sound like 100 pounds. I'm like, well, what part of the value were you in? I'm like, it's 100 pounds, man. I'm like, here's the book right here. He's like, all right. He's like, I'm going to sit here for a little bit. That's fine. Blow
100
100 pounds,
pounds.
blow 100 pounds, blow 100 pounds, you know? And then he's like, man, you guys are just fucking running through it, ain't you? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you guys training anybody? I'm like, no. I'm like, task and purpose. Lot, expiration dates on things, and like we were blowing minds that, anyways. Yeah. He's like, all right, you guys are doing it. I'm out of here. You get down the road and fucking, he'd call us on race control radio. He's like, man, it sure does sound louder down here. I'm like, must be that fucking valley, man. Must be the valley. But yeah, Korea was great. Korea was great. And it what the Korean War did was establish the the Katusa program in Korea, which is Korean Army soldier augmented to the United States Army. Um, and basically, how that worked was as a squad. You have an 8-man squad. You'll have a squad leader and two team leaders, which you have an E6 and two E5s, and then each of those teams would have two fire teams, right? Four, uh, 3 4-man teams or whatever, and 4 of those are going to be Katusas, are going to be Korean soldiers, and so in Korea, if you are a military age male, um, you have to give 2 years in the army. Have to. Um, so what the non because they don't have a Korean Air Force for all the smart kids to go to. They have the Katusa program, which um, if you qualify for college or you're in college or you went to college a couple of years and then you take a break, you come be a Katusa and then you go back to college or whatever the case may be. um, you have the ability to speak English and things of that nature. um, you get to be in the Katusa program and then you get to um, hang out with us, and which I don't know if that's a good thing for their culture, uh, but yeah, I mean, And then you have the Republic of Korea army, and them motherfuckers are harder than woodpecker lips. Um, and like their special forces would come and do, displays of what they do, and Jesus Christ. Um, but I'll tell you another story about me before we go back. Uh, when I first got to Korea in '93, I'm standing in the orderly room and I'm looking out the window of the CQ, and all I see is uh, a, a squad of individuals in BDUs, and then a person standing in front of them, and it looked like a in-ranks inspection. Sure. And so, these are Korean War buildings, little huts, metal huts,
little Kwanzats.
and yeah, and so the windows are hazy, and you can't really make out. All of a sudden, the guy in charge that's standing in front of the squad smacks the shit out of the dude, the squad member, and I'm like, "What the fuck?" And the CQ, the private sitting on CQ, he's like, "What?" I'm like, "That motherfucker just slapped that dude," and he's like, "Oh yeah." I'm like, "The fuck?" He's like, "That happens all the time." I'm like, "Nobody's smacking me." He's like, "What?" I'm like, "There, nobody's fucking smacking me." And just fucking platoon sergeant comes behind me. He's like, "What'd you say, private?" I'm like, "Hey, sergeant, ain't nobody smacking me." He's like, and then he digs in my ass, and he's like, "Who the hell you think you are?" Blah 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 blah. And he's like, "Hey, first sergeant." Yeah. He's like, "Vickers here is in my platoon." He's like, "Go outside and report to Sergeant Cummings." "Roger, Sergeant, moving." I go outside, report to Sergeant Cummings. Sergeant Cummings, Private Vickers reporting. Yeah. He's like, "All right, get the end of the fucking formation. We have formation tomorrow morning. We're doing a march up. So you saw a mountain. Cool. So you saw a mountain right outside of Camp Castle. Fucking, it was like Curry Heat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
3 miles up, 3 miles down.
Hold on a second. You've now differentiated what happened with the cat getting smacked by the other cat, because people probably are like,
Oh, I'll get there.
okay,
Yeah, I'll get there. So, um, they hand me the 60 because I'm
a
six
giant.
foot 6'4", 225, 30 pounds at the time. And so I carried this 60 up, fucking so you saw a mountain, back down, and fucking cleaning. So I'm standing there, and uh and I say something to another private, and he's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Fucking formation right over there." I'm like, "Motherfucker got smacked the shit out of him." I'm like, "I don't know what the fuck he said, but ain't nobody smacking the shit out of me." I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, he's like, "I don't know what the fuck you're talking about." I'm like, "All right." So fast forward a week, and here, this is the Rock Army, the Rock Sergeant Major, augmentee, right? He is a Rock Sergeant Major. He is an augmentee to the United States Army. And basically, he's here to remind those fucking privates, you are still a fucking Korean. Whatever, no matter what these fucking jackasses are doing, you're still a fucking
Yeah,
Korean.
you might
And
be augmented to the U.S. Army, but you ain't in the
right,
U.S. Army.
yeah. And so he stand now. They go to a basic training, right? And they do all this integrated shit, and then they get pushed over to us, and then so a week later, new set of privates, and boom, this motherfucker's smacking the shit out of him. I'm like, "Oh fuck." And then, now I have Koreans in my squad. So, my fucking, my ass would be like, "Man, Kim, if a war ever breaks off, man, I'm fucking turning your lights out first. Oh, why? I'm like, you mean to tell me that you fight with me against your cousin? Like, come on, bro. Like, we know what's up. He's like, oh, no, no, no. We friends. I'm like, yeah, nah, fuck that. And then when Kim Il Sung died, you know what I mean? And we're loading live rounds. I'm like, your ticket's about to get pushed, Kim. uh, yeah, but I mean, fuck. Yeah. I was going to tell another one, but I'll stop. I could tell Korea stories all day.
Oh, we're gonna have to do an episode just on Korean
I mean,
stories.
goddamn.
Uh,
And
what?
it's amazing how much soju I drank. I remember any of them. Just
And
saying.
then my dad gave you that bottle.
Yeah. It's like fucking turpentine. It was so good. So fucking good.
A bottle he got in the early '80s and brought home with him, and it's
Yeah.
been closed ever since.
Ever since.
So like a 40-year-old bottle.
You open it up, you don't smell nothing because it's odorless. It's fucking carbon monoxide in a fucking bottle. It is. It's tasteless. It's odorless. It's carbon monoxide. It'll fucking kill you. You drink enough of it. It will.
Uh,
And so many GIs find themselves in turtle ditches naked with their fucking ID card between their ass cheeks because Koreans, they know. No, they know you would rob a fucking GI, but you take his fucking ID card, you fucked up. That's straight up. Straight up. And I'm here to testify that I have never woken up drunk in a turtle ditch with an ID card in my ass. Never. Ever, ever. And I'm proud of that fact.
fuck me, man.
Straight, straight up.
On a more serious note, talking about Americans and GIs.
Yep.
One thing I found really interesting is in the Korean culture, um, family ties,
Oh.
bloodlines is real big.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the sheer amount of mixed race because of GIs, children that are automatically shifted or shipped off to Korean orphanages
Oh yeah.
because they don't have that family tie.
Yeah.
Like I was like, wow, that's pretty crazy. And that was like a big influx into either a um, more pregnant Korean women by GIs immigrating to the US and the increase in Korean adoptions from the US
Yeah.
because of that they might be pro-American but don't fuck up their bloodline.
Yeah. 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 So, which probably adds that I don't know this to be fact, but it probably adds to the amount of foreign what's the term?
Working ladies,
Yes. Foreign working ladies, Russians, Filipinos, uh
because they don't care about that bloodline.
no, they don't care about that bloodline. Yeah. I mean now Ajima, she'll fucking hook anybody. She'll fucking trick anybody. Um Fucking Ajima, you walk through the fucking you walk through the streets and old fucking Ajima is pulling on your fucking your shirt tail. Hey, you want girl? You know, fuck.
Different world.
Drastically different world.
Yeah, different
Yeah,
world.
drastically different world.
Uh,
And then fucking at some point, some congressman went over there and fucked all that up. Like, like there's so much prostitution. There's so much prostitution in Korea.
it's the oldest profession in the world, man.
And I'm like,
Anywhere GIs go, alcohol and prostitution are the two
well,
industries that flourish.
yeah, and that's the thing, like, and then so many fucking GIs are falling in love with fucking. It's one thing if you're walking through the village and a girl you catch a glimpse of a girl at the corner of your eye. It's love at first sight. You know what I mean? I get that. You walk, you walk into a fucking club at midnight, and a girl gets up from a booth, wiping the corners of her mouth, right? And you fall in love with her. mm, eh,
I got a Mustang for sale with 28% interest.
you know what I'm saying? God, I've seen fucking dudes try to kill each other over fucking girls. Come on.
Now, my dad lived with a girl. You know, wasn't supposed to, but you know, a lot of GIs did. You know,
Right.
he lived with one over there, but she made it known to him. I'm not fucking going to America with you. I'm not marrying you or any of that bullshit. There was a GI here before you. There'll be a GI here after you. And you know, he was like, "All right, cool. You know, like just let's roll." But she wasn't looking for that ticket to, you
Yeah.
know, uh,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's it's terrible. Fathers whore their daughters out to people they owe money to,
yep.
which is terrible. And as you know, the
And that's just not a Korean thing.
no, but the hypocritical part is that us us GIs take part in that. They're like, oh, that's terrible. You know what I mean?
But you owe me $50. I mean,
Like I would never whore my daughter out because I owe somebody some fucking money. Uh, yeah, I mean it's craziness.
well, and part of the problem with that is, I seen it a lot when we were in the Middle East. You know, they tell us to follow cultural customs,
Yeah,
um, and then when we follow cultural customs that aren't in line with American values and customs, they're like, "Hey, don't do that." Well, well, motherfucker, what do you want me to do? You
right,
know, um,
right,
you know, you've told stories about some of the things you've endured when you were in Iraq with, you know, kicking in doors and
mhm,
stuff. It's all of the tolerance that America has within the borders of America. There's not a whole lot of tolerance when we go to these places. You know, it's we don't care what your customs and courtesies are. We're going to do things the way we do it.
right.
And then no, 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 no. You need to follow their customs and courtesies. So then we do, and we stand back and we watch a young girl because a GI kicked in the door of the house to search it and she wasn't clothed. And so they drag her out of the house, and the whole neighborhood stones her to death because she was seen naked by someone who wasn't her husband.
Yeah,
And we just have to stand there and watch it.
yeah,
Like, like pick your fucking poison here, man.
right, right,
So it's just that has nothing to do with the Korean War,
right.
but that has everything to do with what you were talking about
But
with
there's a lot. I mean, and I'm sure there's been Koreans that have been persecuted because you know,
it
like
happened a lot in Vietnam.
yeah, yeah.
Look what happened to all the uh was it which one of the countries it was, maybe Denmark, Norway, I don't, where all of the women that the German
Oh yeah,
soldiers
yeah, yeah,
took, and then when they were liberated, they tormented those women
yeah.
to no end because they were, you know,
They were doing what they thought they had to do to stay alive.
to stay alive and to save their kids,
Right,
and you know, and the town did not think very highly of them
right.
for doing that.
Yeah,
It's a rough predicament. You
yeah,
know, there's a whole deep dive rabbit hole we can go down on stuff like that.
yeah.
But
Um, yeah. You know, I loved my time in Korea. I loved.
most people, most single men and most unscrupulous men,
Yeah,
um,
I would be the latter.
well, your first go round. Oh, you weren't single then either, were you?
No, I was
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
I wasn't single. I wasn't single neither time.
yeah. Um,
And let me tell you, and um, it wasn't. It wasn't because of it, it, whore- I don't. Whores might be a little.
let's use working ladies,
Yeah, yeah,
ladies of the night.
yeah. yeah, like I I don't know, like I I don't want to pay for some ass, right? Like that don't do it for me. So I did not partake in the
Solicitation of prostitution.
right. I did see a donkey show one time with a midget. Uh,
That had some ass in it, right?
most certainly did. I did see a donkey show one time. Um, but yeah, I mean, no, um, you know,
When I was over there, when I was in Iraq as a contractor, my wife heard about all of the lunacy that happens in Thailand when guys take their R&R to Thailand. And she told me, she goes, if you ever are even on an airplane that flies over Thailand airspace, we got a fucking problem.
yeah, yeah, you know, and that my thoughts on, my thoughts on, I think it's a, now don't get me wrong. My big ass would walk into a club filled with Russian working girls, and they would call me Ivan and like rub my chest and shit. That's pretty fucking fly. You know what I mean? I don't, I didn't mind that shit. I'm not fucking you.
Give me some
I'm
vodka.
not. Yes, I'm not fucking buying you drinks. None of that shit. Like no. Which I was very
But I ain't go,
stingy.
but I ain't gonna kick you out of bed for eating cookies.
Yeah, right. Um, yeah, but they're nice to have around to stroke your fucking ego, but that's as far as you're stroking.
Yeah, at least you.
Well, that's just me.
But you didn't buy a Mustang at 28%
I
interest
didn't.
either.
I did not.
So
I did not.
yeah, so it's called the Forgotten War for a reason.
That, and we've forgotten about it for this episode. Sorry.
Not exactly, because a lot of things we talked about led to where Korea is today,
Yeah,
especially in regards to the U.S. Army.
yeah, absolutely, and why we're still there, and why we still have a need to be there, and
And even with all of that turmoil, it's still one of the most, if not the most, pro-American country in the world.
yeah.
It's more pro-American than fucking America is.
Oh, I would, yes,
Like
and
that's crazy.
yeah, and I've been over there for some protests. Unfortunately, we've had some soldiers do some fucking bonehead shit.
You pick a country we're in, and
Yeah,
they've done some dumb shit,
right, and
to include our own.
yeah. So I mean,
Because, like you said, the concept is great.
yeah,
People fuck it up.
human beings fuck it up every time. So yeah, and then they're like, hey, we have to lock you guys down. Okay, I understand. Like I'm not pissed off. Like you should be mad. And then the government does government shit, and these fucking guys are taken out of the country in the middle of the night. You're like, well, if they did stupid shit and killed civilians, you got to stand trial for that shit. But
Yeah,
it is what it is.
rightfully so.
But yeah, it you know all the time I spent in Korea just makes my appreciation for those who fought in Korea that much higher.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
because not only can you appreciate what they went through, you've gotten the experience that wouldn't have been possible if they wouldn't have done it.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And they did it so I wouldn't have to.
Right.
Because let me tell you, fighting in Korea, it just knowing what I know about war, fighting in Korea fucking looks tough. You know what I mean? And that's how I approach things. That's when I go to Gettysburg. That's how I look at things from a military perspective, a war perspective. That's how I can appreciate motherfuckers running across an open field into fucking cannon fire.
Which gives you the appreciation when an old Korean vet goes, they're thinking it's fucking cold.
And yes, and I've been, we did cold weather training in Korea, by sleeping in sleeping bags on the ground. Not in tents, just fucking get in your sleeping bag, lay on the ground. That was cold weather training. You know, I woke up in fucking Korea in fucking March, covered in fucking snow. And I'm like, God damn. Like, just the level of fucking.
Did Private Vickers remember to put his boots in the sleeping bag?
Yeah. And you know, but that was the second time I woke up in the snow. I was fucking E6 then, and yeah.
Did you have at least one private that was a dumbass that left him out of the sleep
Oh
bag?
yeah. Yeah.
There's always one.
Yeah. But that's when I in Korea is where I invented the polypro dicky because my my battalion sergeant major made everyone wear the EWEX system, extreme cold weather system in Korea, and I sweat like um, well, I sweat like a big fat ass, like I am, um, and so wearing polypro under fucking Gore-Tex. So I cut my polypro pants into shorts, and then I just cut the fucking the neck out of my polypro top with the zipper. And so I put I have my have my fucking t-shirt on, throw that on, zip it up, throw my jacket on. And I'm like, man, fuck this. But it looked like you gotta work smarter, not harder, Sergeant Major. I'm just saying. Fuck. Like,
I'm wearing it, Sergeant Major.
like, goddamn, like, I get it. You want me to wear this shit for my safety. But if, you know, you don't want me to get frostbite, I get it. But I'm gonna die of fucking heat exhaustion. So, you know, I'll meet you halfway.
Nobody's going to believe you got a heat injury
Right.
in the winter in Korea.
Yeah. But I um never wore my Mickey Mouse boots ever. Um you ever wear Mickey Mouse boots? No.
I didn't wear them. I had them issued to me once.
Never wore my Mickey Mouse boots. Never wore my trigger mittens. Um Never. Nope. Uh
Yeah, I had that extreme cold weather gear issued to us when we went to Afghanistan because we were going to be
yeah.
there over the winter. Yeah, no.
Never wore my PAL cap. You ever wear your PAL cap? Never. Never wore my fucking PAL cap. Well, you know, full disclosure, it didn't fucking fit.
Shocker.
It didn't fucking fit right, but never wore my fucking PAL cap. Never put the flaps down on my fucking PC. Everybody fucking put their flaps down on. I'm like, that's the dumbest fucking thing.
I never wore it. I would put it down to do dumb shit, but never wore it to wear
Oh.
it out. You know what I mean?
Never. I never wore my fleece hat in uniform.
Nah, see, now in Afghanistan, I did.
Never did that.
But in Afghanistan, I had thermals on, my DCUs, my my fleece liners, my Gore-Tex, gloves, and a hat, sitting in a truck with the heat going.
God damn.
And we were still, it was negative fucking 19 degrees out. And if you've never been on a flight line, there's nothing to stop the wind.
Well, I mean, I get that.
So you're out there in the middle of the night.
I don't know. That just sounds like a lot.
It was. And it still wasn't enough because it got fucking cold. Like, I got a new appreciation for people when I had to be on a fucking flight line in the winter in Afghanistan, in Bagram. Like, that's some fucking cold shit. And then I'd get pissed when the day shift would come in and they'd just be wearing a set of DCUs and nothing else. And then you'd come in and they'd had the air conditioning running. You're like, you motherfuckers. Do you have any idea what we go through at night? Oh, wait, you don't because your ass is fucking sleeping, you bitch.
Yeah.
I'm not bitter, though.
Well, when I was in Iraq, I had my air conditioner on. I called it Siberia, and it would freeze up all the fucking time.
Yeah. But remember how big the flies were in Iraq?
Yeah.
Like, those motherfuckers were like unmanned drones. I would keep my office so fucking cold that they couldn't, because they were super fast too. I keep my office so cold that they couldn't fly very fast, so I could kill them big bitches with fucking anti-aircraft. Like it was crazy. But yeah,
Yeah,
cold.
cold.
So
So
please don't forget about Korea.
yeah, I mean
You know,
it's one of, we're losing veterans um, from that generation, from World War II, from Korea. We're at a high rate,
yeah,
and
because Father Time wins every
yeah,
time.
every time, and so it's bad that we have to call a war the forgotten war. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And you know, um,
Do some Googling,
yeah, I
learn
mean,
about it.
yep,
I already know a little bit about it, but I learned so much just Googling about this episode. And
yeah. I mean, it was weird. Like I never met my mom's dad. Um, I've never met him, but he served in D-Day, and my mom tells me that after. Hey, your grandfather. I'm like, that would have been a nice nugget to throw in there. That would have been a nice nugget, but you don't talk to me like, but I get it. She don't talk to me about war because I think she might think that I might say something. Uh, but she don't.
my grandfather was in Korea, but I
She
never got to meet him. He died 2 years before I was born.
she don't listen to our podcast because she she's like, you're gonna say things I don't want to hear. And I'm like, you're right. And she's like, that's why I don't listen. I'm like, that's fine.
At least she acknowledges it.
Yeah.
But mom, you can still
And then
give
my
it.
dad, he can't figure out his fucking phone to,
But mom, you can create an account and still give us a subscription.
right, right.
Click a thumbs up. So, but anyways, with the Korean War, don't forget about it because it diminishes the sacrifices that your grandfather or your great grandfather did. Understand that the war never officially ended, so things could still pop off, especially with the Kim dynasty and the way they approach um, their ruling of the North Korean country. But also, this is just an example of how we're forgetting history because it's not being taught to us,
Yep.
or it's being watered down, or we're getting a political um, uh, filter.
Yeah, you're gonna look at things with you know the rose-colored glasses that you want to see. You know, it
Try to be objective.
yeah,
When you know your grandfather or your great grandfather was forced into a predicament that he didn't want to be in.
yeah. I mean, as soon as you start, we shouldn't have been there. All right, move on.
Yep,
Like there ain't no changing your
yep.
fucking mind.
You're right. We shouldn't have, but we were.
Yeah,
So it is what it
it
is.
is what it is.
Yeah.
And
Don't destroy the memory of your grandfather because you don't agree with the politics of whatever conflict he was
right,
in.
right.
Which brings us to this week's fuck that guy. And that's going to be where's he at? Here
Oh,
he
Lewis
is.
Johnson. Oh,
Yes.
Defense Secretary.
Louis Arthur Johnson, Defense Secretary. He was the Secretary of Defense from 1949 to 1950.
Yep.
He was Truman's Secretary of Defense, which he was also a massive donor to Truman's 48 presidential run.
Mm-hmm.
When he was, because Truman took over after FDR,
Yep.
but 48 was his actual election that he had to fight for. Truman had, we talked earlier about it, Truman had the vision that we are going to spend practically nothing on defense. We have the atomic bomb. Nobody's going to fuck with us. We don't need to spend money on that. We need to
Right.
spend money on other things. And he also wanted to bring all of the branches together so that you didn't have four different versions of this committee and that committee and this committee and that committee. And originally, a lot of the generals that were in charge, Omar Bradley's a prime example. Originally, he said, with the way they're cutting the defense budget, the United States Army couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag. Political pressure, um, uh, wanting to be and continue to be in charge of whatever they were in charge in, getting money for their respective branches, dick measuring contests. Well, if I don't toe the company line, they're just going to replace me with somebody else. A year later, General Bradley was quoted as saying that these changes will make the Army a much more efficient fighting force. And this is Omar Bradley.
Yep.
This dude knows. Like he's been there. He's seen it. So it was disheartening to see somebody that I hold in high esteem change their view because of, again, this is the start of that politicizing of, you know, where politicians are going to be running what's happening and Joe's going to have to pay the price.
Yeah.
So Secretary Johnson, he took Truman's concept of cutting defense spending and he
Literally.
yeah, he executed it to an insane degree. When he entered office, he sought to cut that. So Truman was known to approach defense budgetary requests in the abstract, without regard to defense response requirements in the event of conflicts with potential enemies. So what he would do is Truman would say, "Okay, the United States has an annual budget this year of $100 million. All right, this is going to take this. 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 Okay, everything's subtracted. What's left? $2 million. Okay, that goes to the defense budget. Now you guys figure out what to do with that." And so the generals were always fighting about what to get. So the Air Force was cutting the knees out from underneath the Navy, saying they didn't need super carriers and all of these ships because you're not delivering an atomic bomb via a boat. We need good new bombers and new planes to be able to do what we need to do. So we should get the money. And the Army's like, hey, we need to get all this stuff retrofitted, reconditioned, and pushed back. The Marine Corps, which again, we've talked about how the Marine Corps does the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps said, fuck all y'all. We don't care what you're talking about. We're going to take all our shit that we got, we're going to retro, refit, and we're going to put it in storage because we're the Marine Corps and we need to be able to do what we do. And that was the problem that they had when they went into Korea. They had their stuff they needed, but because the Navy had been decimated and all of their landing craft had been scrapped, they didn't have what they needed to get to shore. Um, so Johnson, he's fucking running with this shit. He's cutting everything. Um, every year it's getting cut down. And then they had what they called the revolt of the admirals, where a bunch of the admirals got together and were trying to do things, and then
Right.
he quashed that. And it got to the point where the toll in losses and death and uh, everything came to such a head during the Korean War that Truman couldn't leave him in place anymore. He had to basically tell him, I need your resignation because you have fucked this up so bad. And he's looking at him like, bro, I just did what you wanted.
Yep.
Yeah, but the optics are I can't be fired. Motherfucker, you're gonna take the fall for this one.
Yep.
And so he got rid of him. And and I agree that motherfucker should have been gotten rid of.
Hmm.
But you're just acting on what the president that appointed you's policies was. Um so then that's when he put MacArthur in as the Secretary of Defense, which I really wasn't a step up in my view, but hey, at least
Well, I mean, it's one of those things where we talked about earlier that you know uh, he relieved MacArthur of his duties as commanding general of Allied forces, and he was a 5-star, and just to and MacArthur, he came home to a ticker tape parade, hailed a hero, you know. Um, I mean, he was in Japan for 14 years or something. Like he was in the Far East for like 14 years or whatever it was. Um, so when he came home, he was hailed a hero.
I think that a lot of people look at MacArthur being named after Johnson was a way to um, appease the Joint Chiefs that, all right, hey, we're not going to have a politician in there. We're going to have a guy who's been there, he's done that. You know, everything he did in World War II and everything in the Pacific, you know, he's going to be able to right the ship that this rogue secretary went off on.
Right. I don't know. You know.
Yeah. But yeah, so while Secretary Lewis Johnson is getting the main title of the fuck that guy,
Yeah.
it's Truman's got a piece of that.
Yep.
You know, because Truman gave him the marching orders. He just executed it the way he thought it needed to be executed. And again, he donated so much money. Of course, he was going to get some type of appointment.
Right.
But also another reason why that I thought was rather interesting that Truman got rid of him is he started clashing with the other cabinet members. He was trying to run other sections of government. He got too big for his britches.
Mm,
And then you can't get rid of him because of that, but you can take his absolute and complete total fuck up, like having to pull Pershing fucking tanks down and send them to fucking Korea because you fucked everything completely so bad.
right.
That was um the public approval reason
Yeah.
to get rid of him.
Yeah.
But they all, even as much as I hold Omar Bradley in esteem for what he did to flip flop like that, knowing it wasn't true at all, he gets a little bit of a fuck that guy for that one too.
Yeah. It just makes you think what Korea would have looked like if George Patton was over there. You know what I mean? You can what if that to death.
Here's one for you. Instead of Lewis Johnson being the Secretary of Defense, old fucking Mad Dog Mattis.
Right. On that note,
He had a knife hand his way well past the 38th parallel.
on that note,
Yep.
yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, it's politicians are always going to do things that's in the best interest of them, and then like, oh, this is a great idea. It's one of those things like, what's the best idea that I benefit, the country benefits, the fucking, what idea that everybody benefits from this one? Well, okay, that's pretty good. What idea that I benefit the most, and then the American people, and then let's go with that one. But all these scenarios, I'm going to benefit, and then um,
And that's why I've said it before that politicians should have to wear jackets with their
yeah,
lobbyists on them,
yeah,
like NASCAR racers
yep.
do.
Every time they come up to the podium,
Yep.
I like
Who
I like to
owns
thank old Jiffy Lube.
who owns
It's
my
like,
ass?
right.
Because and if you don't like the motherfuckers that are on his jacket, you don't want that guy making decisions.
Hold on. There's an app out there, and people's making fucking bank. Uh, it will invest your money in stocks that Nancy Pelosi invests in.
But
It's
she
a,
doesn't have insider
no,
trading.
no, no, right? So cool, but so you just it's like auto. You put money in there, and it'll auto buy stock, and everything she buys stock. If she sells stock, it automatically sells it. Just saying, it's out there. I don't do that shit
Yeah,
because
because her husband is a stock trading genius
right,
with no insider
that
information.
gets hit in the hammer by get hit in the head with a hammer by naked homosexuals. Like, who am I? Who am I to talk about other people's doings? As long as you don't wake up with an ID card in your ass, you're good by me. We'll see you next time.